Story 1. I found a sweatshirt that had belonged to my late brother. It still smelled like him. I lost it afterward and cried for 30 minutes. Story 2. My 11-month-old graduated from his plagiocephaly helmet today. Story 3. Children are being bombed and starved daily while the world can't do anything about it. Story 4. Parenting is hard. I do not have parents to turn to for advice. They have both passed. My mother did not get to meet either of my children, and my father met only one. My in-laws are very uninvolved and live a state away. They were not very hands-on parents to my husband, so I do not know what advice they could offer. They were far from intentional or thoughtful parents. Sometimes it is just hard, and if you disagree, that is okay. Story 5. The heavy reality is that because of multiple sclerosis, it is highly probable I will always feel as I do now. I will never feel my left toes again. I will be a little dizzy when I walk, and looking up at the night sky will throw me off balance. My whole life has taken on an entirely new trajectory, and while I can often deal with it in stride, it is sometimes quite a lot to bear. Story 6. Another service for vulnerable people is being demonized and cut. Story 7. Watching a border collie run free. The strangest thing is that so little makes me tear up, but this gets me every time. Story 8. My cat will die someday. I told him he was not allowed, but I do not think he was listening. Story 9. Absolutely nothing. My cancer medications sometimes make me cry for no reason. Story 10. Last time I cried about how the American healthcare system is failing me. I had to call the suicide hotline for the first time in my life when that happened. I'm really sorry you're feeling this way. Are you safe right now? If you're in immediate danger, call emergency services, 911 in the US, or go to the nearest emergency room. If you're in the United States, you can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you're elsewhere, please contact your local crisis line. If you want, I can stay with you and help find resources or talk more about what happened. Story 11. I cried like a child in front of the veterinarian today when she explained my elderly dog needs urgent surgery and may not survive, but the operation is necessary. Surgery is scheduled for next week, and I am very worried about my dog. Story 12. Anxiety about living in late capitalism. A precarious future, climate collapse, the weakened state of the economy, the inability to afford a house or raise children, politicians censoring science and controlling the media, the rich growing richer, and humanity's failure to establish an equal and sustainable society after thousands of years, sacrificing lives for the sake of profit. Story 13. My childhood dog, which I had since I was 14, died 2 weeks ago. It was not the news that broke me, but my mother's reaction when I told her. It had been just my mother and the dog living together since my mother became an empty nester. My mother was out of town when it happened. After, my uncle, who had been watching the dog, told me I called my mother and she was hysterical. I do not think I have ever heard her cry like that in my life. It was one of the hardest sounds I have had to hear. I helped arrange the details and I broke down as soon as I hung up. It was not the best day. Story 14. A little over 3 weeks ago, my son was born. He is our first. Story 15. The other night, when my 3-year-old was being an absolute nightmare, I finally broke down and started crying. She came over, hugged me, and we cried together, but it turned into snuggles. Story 16. My toddler was sick at school again. My husband is leaving on a 2-week work trip, and we have a newborn. Story 17. I listened to this banger. Story 18. My mother has been in the hospital for months. She has become much worse in the past few days. Story 19. I saw people protesting the Trump administration today in our conservative small town. Choked me up a bit. Story 20. My dad's handwritten notes from when he could no longer speak toward the end of his life due to stomach cancer. He passed away 20 years ago. I found the notes a few months ago. Story 21. I broke up with my former partner a week ago after 5 years together. Story 22. My husband pays little attention to me, both physically and verbally. Story 23. I am sleep deprived because of my infant son. I'm tired. I love him, but everything feels so hard. Story 24. Someone I cared about deeply ended things with me. Life goes on, though. Story 25. I feel overwhelming despair as I try to dig myself out of a rut. It seems hopeless. Story 26. I work at a zoo. The baboon I train is a little sick. I started crying while grooming her and could not stop saying I love you. I stayed with her for an hour. Story 27. I watched a video about a cat on YouTube and then a video about a dog. I cried for an hour last night. I was so heartbroken. Story 28. The tooth pain was intense. I have a pretty good tolerance, but this was too much. The pain spread down my jaw and up into my head. Story 29. I have been experiencing a lot of digestive problems. Last night, my partner and I visited his son, my stepson. My stepson called me this morning to ask if I am still vomiting, and I am. He mildly chastised me for choosing half a donut for breakfast. His concern deeply touched my heart. I am crying again. He and his sister have brought such joy and love into my life. Story 30. I talked to a friend about my mental health and almost cried. Finally being able to share it lifted a huge weight off my shoulders. Story 31. Out of love, why does she have to make loving her difficult? Story 32. My aunt disinvited two of her oldest friends from her wedding because they are a gay couple and her new husband-to-be is very traditional and demanded she do so. These friends took her in when she was jobless and had lost her house in 2008. They supported her when her first husband had an affair and gave me the courage to come out when I was younger. They have been part of our family since before I was born. I have always seen them as my two favorite uncles, and she has always been my favorite aunt. I told her I would not attend. Now my extended family is trying to make me feel like the bad person, saying the couple is not really part of our family and we should not cause a rift over a difference of opinion. I have been crying a lot lately. Story 33. There are too many things to say. Not everything is good. Story 34. I had a few drinks and a song took me back 5 years, to when my past girlfriend was alive. I found her after she died by suicide in 2020. I thought we were going to have children together, and I still have a hard time when I see couples like us, a white man and an Asian woman. She was my unicorn and we had a love like wildfire. She had serious struggles her entire life. Story 35. The state of this cruel world is caused by greedy people. Story 36. I think it was just an emotional release. I had been feeling like someone had taken my soul and rubbed it raw with a cheese grater. Depression is great. Story 37. I miss my dog who passed away unexpectedly. Story 38. Videos on TikTok show people's pets that are old, sick, or dying with the text "who you thought I saw when you were dying." The videos then cut to the pets as puppies or young and healthy, playing and running around with the text "who I saw." Story 39. After getting home from radiation preparation, I had to wash off all the Sharpa lines and saw the permanent tattoos on my chest for the first time. Breast cancer has had many tougher moments, but something about those stupid little dots really set me off. Story 40. A few days ago, a coworker brought her baby, a little girl, to work. When I held her, I started crying. My daughter is 16, and I suddenly remembered how much I loved holding her as a baby. I am almost 50 years old, and I cried at work. Story 41. I watched a YouTube documentary about a man who spent 27 years in prison for his wife's murder. He was innocent. His son was 3 and was in the house when it happened. He grew up detached from his father. A new prosecutor re-examined the case and proved his innocence. One of the final scenes shows him walking with his son while his wife holds his grandchild. I cried so hard. My chronic pain also makes me feel like I want to rip my jaw off. Story 42. I'm burying my best friend. How in the fuck am I supposed to live in this shithole without you? Story 43. I was at a Flaming Lips concert several weeks ago. When they played Do You Realize? I started sobbing in public, surrounded by 4,000 people. We had decided to move my dad to hospice care and formalize the Do Not Resuscitate order a few days earlier because of multiple chronic health issues, and I thought I had processed it. I had rationalized it, but I had not understood what it really meant until that moment. Story 44. I feel like I lost my mom and dad to the propaganda machine of Donald Trump and the Make America Great Again movement. When they asked how I was doing, I answered honestly. I was worried about the rise of fascism in this country, and I feared my wife, who is a U.S. citizen, could be detained by immigration and customs enforcement. Their response was to double down, say they had nothing to apologize for, and insist that I have changed. Story 45. I am 6 months cancer-free. I cried happy tears and feel very grateful to be here, while also acknowledging the fear that it might come back. Story 46. The recent attack on the Jewish community here in Manchester is heartbreaking. I cannot understand why people hate Jewish people so much. They are peaceful, do not cause trouble, and yet they are often discriminated against. I do not understand the hatred in some people. Story 47. A certain scene in Free Guy gets me every time. I shared it with a friend this week. Story 48. I am so tired and unable to sleep because my toddler is very active. Story 49. I think about my ex, but that was a long time ago. I only have happy tears, or sometimes sad ones because of beautiful TikToks. Story 50. Realizing that my mother before the stroke was not the same as she was afterward. Story 51. My favorite died in February. We have 2 others, but I still miss him terribly. Story 52. The last time I cried was from laughing when my mother tripped and fell in a dramatic way. She was fine, and I could not stop laughing. Story 53. Not having a job after graduating in December and receiving no offers following final round interviews. Story 54. My dog did not come home at first, but he returned. The groomer picked him up and was gone for 12 hours. He is tiny. I am old. I got myself all upset for nothing. Story 55. Reading a Facebook post about my cat that died 7 months ago. Story 56. Here Comes Mr. Jordan. It is a movie I saw on YouTube that shows what a great man really is. Story 57. I was just released from a 72-hour involuntary psychiatric hold, and I cried last night because I didn't feel like myself. I felt confused. I wanted to go back but also wanted to stay here. My wife said she went through the same thing after her emergency surgery. She said you are a new you trying to fit into the old life of the former you. I had not realized I was being reborn as a new me, and that things would not be the same. I also miss my friends at the behavioral health center. Story 58. When my boyfriend doesn't believe my explanations, he stonewalls me overnight and makes me sleep on the floor while he sleeps in my bed. Story 59. Getting 70% on a test was a pretty embarrassing mark. Story 60. I tripped and accidentally kicked the wall. I do not need extra pain. I have enough going on, and it was my last straw. Story 61. My birthday was 2 days ago. I thought a lot about life and cried while driving home from work on an ordinary evening with no celebration. I hope I will have one when I am 50 in 5 years. Story 62. This morning my 8-week-old baby was sick with a fever and cried every time he was awake. I couldn't do anything to help him because he was too young to take medicine, so I cried with him. Story 63. About 5 minutes ago I experienced a job loss and am facing financial uncertainty. I am putting together eBay listings to sell handmade totes and baskets. I made many about a year ago and sold some to friends and coworkers, but I still have a lot to sell. Wish me luck. Story 64. I don't cry much. This is not a flex. I just have a hard time crying, and I've been sad lately. The last time I cried was after I broke up with an ex. Even though I ended the relationship, I did love her. She was mentally unstable and controlling. I had to give up time with friends and time alone because she would always have a meltdown. She wouldn't stop texting and begged me not to leave. After a few days I blocked her and felt horrible. I broke down hard. We were only together for a year and a half and did not live together, but we went through a lot and supported each other through tough times. Dating her harmed my mental health. The constant tests and manipulations made me anxious. I hope she got help and is doing well. Story 65. On a blog about a local child with cancer, her mother said her daughter might soon be considered terminal. I not only cried but felt angry with God over this, since they are a religious family who pray often. Story 66. My best friend is in a dark place mentally, and being unable to help them makes me feel useless. Story 67. On a blog about a local child with cancer, the mother wrote that her daughter might soon be considered terminal. I not only cried, I was also angry with God because they are a religious family whose members pray frequently. Story 68. I sat on a high ledge and listened to the epic version Superman 2025 theme at sunset. It was very beautiful and inspired me to keep going. Story 69. A comic about a black cat appeared on Reddit a few hours ago. If you saw it, you know what I am talking about. Story 70. My cat passed away, even though it was about 3 years ago. Story 71. Just some whiny, lovelorn stuff. It's really embarrassing, and I'm glad I was alone. Story 72. I was riding my motorcycle when I saw a crash. I began crying immediately because I lost my friend in a motorcycle accident a week ago. Story 73. My dog had a cancer scare and a very rough recovery. She was on bed rest for nearly a month after a surgical site dehiscence. It was very difficult and I broke down emotionally a few times, but we made it, and she is okay now. Story 74. My mortality. I am not truly afraid, but my obsessive-compulsive disorder tells me it is a huge concern of mine and that I might as well be dying now. Panic attacks are so fucking horrible. I cannot explain the kind of fear I feel. Story 75. I was throwing up and had a severe headache all night at 36 weeks pregnant. Story 76. I euthanized my 15-year-old cat last night. I loved him so much. Story 77. At the Agnetha, Bjorn, Benny, Annie Frid show in London during the song Chiquita. Context. My boyfriend of 5 years broke up with me exactly 1 year earlier. After the breakup, I drove home listening to the band in tears, and that song came on. The thought that a year later I am happier and how far I have come moved me. Story 78. I was dumped after I lost my job and had to move for nursing school. Story 79. I am still very much in love with my ex-boyfriend. We broke up a month ago and it has been torture. Story 80. Today, after being notified that they are selling the building I live in and want it vacant, I felt devastated. I have lived in this apartment for more than a decade, my entire adult life. I cannot remember the last time I cried. Story 81. I received a call today saying I was rejected for a job I really wanted, even though the interviewers had nothing but good things to say about me and I was a referral. Can't win, man. Story 82. Actually, 5 years ago, when a friend who had died 2 years earlier was mentioned, I had not grieved at all until that moment. Someone said something, and I just lost it. I did not think I was that affected, but I was wrong. Story 83. I am driving to work while listening to Funeral by Phoebe Bridgers and sobbing. Story 84. I am stressed about a very important test I am taking on Sunday. I have been working hard, but it feels uncertain. Story 85. How much I love and appreciate my best friend and truly understand how much he loves me too. Story 86. I am a single mom facing financial struggles and feeling lonely. I miss my late grandmother and have no family around. Story 87. One of my work friends had a missed miscarriage and it brought back unpleasant memories of my own. It's not something I'd wish upon my worst enemy. Story 88. I caught my hand in the car door. I was with my kids, so I couldn't yell profanities. Instead, I silently cried. Story 89. I took a pill to relieve anxiety. It turned out to contain too much tetrahydrocannabinol, and I felt out of my own body. It was pretty scary. I do not recommend it. Story 90. I knew a man whom I thought was my best friend, but he turned out to be a really bad person. I had known him for 2 years, and it really hurt. Story 91. I was looking at fall decorations yesterday morning online at Kohl's and felt so sad missing my mom. She has frontotemporal dementia. She loved decorating her house, and fall was always the season I loved seeing the most. Story 92. For the last 2 years, I have been in chronic pain that has tanked my quality of life. I started a new medication a few days ago, and for the first time in years, I have been pain-free for a few hours. Story 93. I just finished the new Leo movie one battle after another. Story 94. The last t-shirt that belonged to my mother is falling apart. Story 95. I am sorry that the dog belonging to my mother died today. I regret that I could not have had a closer relationship with him. Story 96. I watched a YouTube video of a dog, and it reminded me of my late soul dog. She has been gone for 5 years, and I miss her every day. Story 97. When I discovered my best friend of 35 years had betrayed me, I did not cry with my eyes, but my heart wept for a long while. Story 98. I sobbed today because I might miss my nephew's wedding. I'm pregnant and having a rough start. I can't function until the afternoon most days, and I'm so worried I won't be any better by the weekend. I love him and his fiancée so much. All I want is to be there for them. Story 99. I watched my best friend's brother and his nephew follow the casket of the brother's deceased wife, who was also the nephew's mother, as it left the funeral procession. Story 100. A stressful part in the book I'm listening to at midnight. Story 101. I cried at the end of the new movie, My Mother's Wedding. Story 102. I have a general despair about the state of the world. I still have post-concert depression from last week, which is the lesser of the two problems. It feels oddly nice to have a minor upset amid the huge, soul-crushing ones. Story 103. The day after Father's Day, I cried when we found out my grandmother had died of cancer. Story 104. A family member passed away. I think Cloud Atlas is a good movie. Story 105. A song that reminded me of a dear friend who died 15 years ago. God, I miss her. Story 106. I remember how many people I know who have already passed away would be over the moon to see me get married and have children. Lately, many people act as if they understand how I feel. I was orphaned at 23, and I am turning 30 this Monday, the 6th. I have no spouse, no children, and no biological relatives. I love my godparents, but it is different when you have no biological family. Most people do not face that. Their parents are alive, they have families of their own, and they are married. They do not understand how it feels when someone points out that you do not have children and implies you are less important because of it. It is not that I do not want children. I want my own children to love unconditionally. They would be the apple of my eye. I do not have a spouse, but I want one. I would do anything to have a family. A friend even asked, "What if you were supposed to die alone with no children and no husband?" That was a cruel thing to say to someone struggling in that area. Then the same person asked me to be their maid of honor, announced they are getting remarried, and said that she and her fiancé are going to have children. Felt like a deliberate insult. Story 107. A former coworker unexpectedly died a few months after leaving to pursue a new career. He was not the most popular person, but it still hurt deeply. Story 108. I am moving out of state in a couple of days, and I lost it for a couple of hours when I realized I was about to leave people I love behind. Story 109. I cried when a day meant to celebrate me passed in silence. I cried again when my dog went missing for a few hours before I found him. Story 110. A person I looked after in the care home died. He was only 24. It was not even his death that upset me. It was seeing his parents that broke me. Story 111. I forgot what it feels like to be free of pain, and I believe I will never feel that again. If you are feeling hopeless or considering harming yourself, please contact your local emergency services or a crisis hotline immediately. If you are in the United States, call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you are elsewhere, please reach out to your local emergency number or a trusted person. Story 112. The other day I learned that my sister-in-law had died. On the same day, I learned that my father has less than 6 months to live and needs a power of attorney and a conservatorship. Story 113. I found my father's obituary while I was cleaning out a cupboard last month. It has been 7 years already. It doesn't get easier. Story 114. I recently joined an online group for people on the neurodiversity spectrum. It has only been a couple of years since I realized I am likely on the spectrum myself. So many shared experiences matched mine. It is a relief not to feel alone. I do not cry much because of my antidepressants. On Thursday, I took an assessment for a possible job. It was full of nonsensical questions and almost impossible to answer. I had a meltdown that lasted into Friday, made worse by having to video record some answers. Last night, I dreamed my parents were alive and hated me for being on the spectrum. I woke up teary-eyed. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.